Hello friends. Under my videos, people often leave comments along the lines of Montenegro is about to shut down shell companies, so stop wasting your time, you'll all be heading back home soon anyway. Today, I want to reflect a bit on this topic. As you know, I have been working in immigration for over 20 years. I've seen how all of this played out in other European countries, and accordingly, I can draw some conclusions. It's obvious, of course, that sooner or later, just like in all other European countries, Montenegro will shut down shell companies. The question is when this will happen. Croatia shut down shell companies long before joining the EU, while the Czech Republic, well, even many years after joining the EU, it continued to allow such companies to operate left and right up until 2009, when the Czech Republic joined the Schengen area, and from that moment, everything ended in a single day. But in reality, this isn't all that important. Why? Let's look at who comes to Montenegro. In most cases, well, I don't know, 99.9%, it's two categories of people. The first category is entrepreneurs who come to Montenegro to do business. And, well, accordingly, they don't need any shell companies, they set up real functioning businesses. The second larger category is freelancers of all kinds, designers, programmers, and so on. Yes, right now they actively use shell companies to hide all their income. But in principle, for this category of people, there's nothing stopping them from accepting payments openly instead of under the table as they do now. They could simply give the client an invoice for payment to their company's account, and in this way their company would stop being a shell and become an active business. Yes, this would mean they'd have to pay some taxes. But taxes in Montenegro are the lowest in Europe. I checked recently, only the Isle of Man has lower taxes. Honestly, I have no idea where that island even is. It's some kind of offshore zone and there are practically no taxes at all. Here, in all other European countries, taxes are much higher than in Montenegro. You can, if you don't believe me, check this information yourself. So even if Montenegro ever decides that all companies must absolutely operate, in principle, nothing terrible will happen. The vast majority of immigrants living in Montenegro can easily adapt to the new requirements if such changes ever occur. But all of this is just speculation about the future. Most likely, shell companies will continue to exist for a few more years. At the very least, none of the Montenegrin politicians. Well, I have never heard anyone express outrage about the existence of such companies or say that they are a problem for anyone. That is, they take a liberal approach to this. I think this will continue for some time yet. As for the future of doing business, if they simply say, go ahead and work, just contribute some revenue to the treasury, then there are no problems. I just explained why. Everyone will easily adapt to these requirements. And there are such examples in many countries. For example, in one of the Eastern European countries, Slovenia for instance, and many others, they simply require that the company operates. There are no other requirements. It becomes concerning if they introduce some other requirements, for example. In reality, there is only one truly concerning requirement. If they simply say work and pay a certain amount in taxes, then practically everyone will comply with that, maybe with some very, very rare exceptions. It becomes concerning if they introduce something like what has been done, for example, in Romania, Bulgaria, and Croatia, where they require you to employ several local residents. But in most Eastern European countries that joined the EU, such requirements were not introduced. This is literally an exception to the rule. I know of 3 countries here, Croatia, Bulgaria, and Romania. As far as I know, this hasn't happened anywhere else. In all other countries, they simply required a certain level of capitalization, a certain level of tax payments, and usually even limited it to just taxes. And here, there are basically no problems at all. I've already mentioned that those who come here will find it very easy to meet these requirements. Accordingly, I don't expect any major problems for immigrants, even in the more or less distant future. Of course, we won't look 20 years ahead, but let's say within the next 7 years, I don't think anyone will encounter any issues here. The only risk is if everyone follows the Croatian, Bulgarian, or Romanian path and says that locals must be given jobs first. But I think that this risk as it applies to Montenegro is quite low because on the one hand there are unemployed people in the country, but on the other hand there is a huge shortage of jobs. That is, it turned out this way because not everyone wants to work in the positions the country offers. Since the country has a clear tilt toward the tourism sector, everyone wants to work in tourism. But in principle, there is a shortage of workers here. There aren't any particularly big problems with unemployment, especially on the coast or in Podgorica, where most Russian speakers and, in general, most immigrants settle. And accordingly, in such a situation, to demand that locals be hired, I just don't really understand the point of that. It's simply illogical. To require that a certain amount of taxes be paid when a company reaches a certain turnover so that businesses operate that, in principle, makes sense. In fact, if I were in their place, I probably would have required this 2 or 3 years ago. But since they haven't done this yet, I think we still have a few years before such requirements start to appear. But in any case, nothing drastically terrible will happen. Immigration won't end because of this. Goodbye, everyone.